led by architect and director Daniel Burnham.
And Daniel Burnham?
Lighting up over 100,000 bulbs.
Dead. American history. They told us to watch for the mark, to fear the future, to brace for apocalypse. But no one told us it already happened. The fire has already fallen, the beast already rose, and the false prophet stood in the temple of God, proclaiming peace while the walls were soaked in blood. Let's go back, not to the future, but to the first century, not to a sci-fi dystopia, but to the heart of Rome. It begins in 54 AD. A man named Nero takes the throne. He is young, violent, drunk with power. And under his reign, Christians begin to disappear. They're thrown to lions, lit as human torches, mocked in arenas, silenced in courtrooms, and still they won't deny the name. Nero isn't just another emperor. In Hebrew numerology, NRWNQSR, Nero Caesar equals 666. He is the beast. And Revelation wasn't warning about some future tyrant. It was naming the one already ruling. Not a chip, not a barcode, not some sci-fi implant from a dystopian future. The mark was always about alliance. In your right hand, what you do. Your forehead, what you believe. But this wasn't new. God said it first, long before Rome, long before John ever saw the vision. And thou shalt bind them for a sign upon thy hand, and thou shalt be the frontlets between thine eyes. Deuteronomy 6:8. That was God's law, marked on your hand to guide your actions, marked on your forehead to shape your thoughts. So when Revelation warns of a mark, it's not new, it's counterfeit, a twisted echo of holiness. The beast didn't invent the mark, he hijacked it. The real war wasn't about skin, it was about souls. And under Rome's new system, if you didn't bow to Nero, if you didn't honor the empire, you couldn't buy, you couldn't sell, you couldn't survive. That was the mark. But Nero wasn't alone. He had help from inside the temple. Enter the false prophet. Not a magician, not a wizard, but something far more dangerous. A high priest in ornate robes, a puppet king named Herod Agrippa II. Men who stood in God's house and pointed the people to Caesar. They wore holiness, but preached the empire, and their sacrifices meant nothing. They were corrupt, appointed by Rome. They hunted down the saints. He had 2 horns like a lamb, but spoke like a dragon. Revelations 13:11. They looked like God's people, but they spoke with the serpent's voice, and the temple once holy became a den of thieves, a brothel of power, a sanctuary for the empire. That's the false prophet. And then the fire fell. In 70 AD, after 3.5 years of siege, starvation, and slaughter, Jerusalem burned. The temple split open, the gold melted between the stones, and not one stone was left on top of another. Just as he said, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. Matthew 24:34. That was the tribulation. The seals opened, the trumpet sounded, the bowls were poured out, and the world as they knew it, the covenant, the temple, the priesthood, was judged. But the story wasn't over. The beast Nero fell on his own sword. The false prophet, Herod's temple elite, were slaughtered. The dragon, Satan, was bound. And what followed was peace. 1,000 years without the enemy's roar. The gospel went forth, The kingdom expanded. Empires crumbled. Cathedrals rose. The saints ruled not with swords, but with truth. This wasn't fantasy. This was history. And now we live in the little season. The devil has been loosed, just for a short time. Deception spreads. History is rewritten, and the world forgets. But we remember. They said the beast was coming, but he already came. They said the mark was in the future, but it was already worn. They said the fire would fall, but it fell in 70 AD. The temple crumbled, the priesthood fell, the saints endured, and the kingdom was born in fire. They didn't wonder who the whore of Babylon was. They didn't argue about whether it was some future system, or a distant apocalypse, or a secret code for people 1,000 years away. They knew, because when John wrote Revelations, he wasn't sending a puzzle for a future generation to guess at. He was sending a warning, a desperate, coded revelation to his people about the monster they were already trapped inside. She wasn't dressed in shadows. She wore scarlet and purple. She was dripped in gold and pearls and power, and she was sitting on the 7 hills, just like the heart of Rome. She was the empire itself, Babylon reborn. The beast, he wasn't some sci-fi creature waiting in the future. He was Nero, mad, divine in his own eyes, the 6th emperor, just as John said. 5 have fallen, 1 is, and Nero was the 1 is. He murdered his own mother, his wife. He burned Rome and blamed Christians. He lit their bodies on fire to illuminate his gardens at night. He lined the streets of the empire with crucifixions. He turned faith into firewood. So when John described a woman drunk with the blood of the saints, his readers didn't flinch. They looked around at the bodies, at the executions, at the silence of Rome's polished marble halls, while the ground ran red outside them. They didn't ask, "Who is this?" They whispered, "She is here." The cup in her hand was gold, but inside, abominations filled idolatry, blood. The wealth of Rome, built on conquest, on stolen lands, on slave labor, and blood tax. A golden cup filled with the price of every life it devoured. And early believers were told, "Come out of her, my people, lest ye share in her sins, lest ye take part in her plagues," because judgment was coming, fast, violent, without warning. And it did. Nero died in disgrace in 68 AD, suicide. His last words, "What an artist dies in me." Rome splintered, chaos erupted, and 2 years later, in 70 AD, the legions returned to Jerusalem and fulfilled every word Christ had spoken. Not one stone left upon another. But here's the terrifying truth. That wasn't the end of her. John called her the mother of harlots, which means she gave birth to more. More empires that killed truth in the name of progress. More beasts drunk on power. More golden cups filled with abomination, offering like salvation. So yes, Babylon was Rome, but her daughters are still here. Any nation that kills the innocent for profit, any church that weds itself to the empire, any ruler who silences the truth and slaughters the righteous to preserve the machine, they wear her clothes, they drink from her cup, and they carry her name. And the warning still stands. Come out of her, because her judgment isn't a myth, it's a cycle. And when it comes again, it will be swift, complete, final. daughters of Jerusalem, weep not for me, but for yourselves and for your children. He was beaten, bloodied, dragging the cross, and still Jesus stopped to warn them, because what was coming would make the crucifixion look like mercy. He told them plainly, "There shall not be left here one stone upon another. This generation shall not pass till these things be fulfilled. You will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven." They didn't believe him, but history did. And 3 men, 3 Roman voices wrote it down. The first, Josephus, a Jewish general turned Roman recorder. He said, "The city ran with blood. Mothers roasted their own infants. Voices were heard crying from the temple, and chariots raced through the clouds." He watched his people destroy themselves from within. He watched the Roman eagle rise and the holy place fall. He said, no generation had ever seen such suffering. Exactly what Jesus said would happen. Tacitus, a Roman senator, not a believer. Tacitus wrote, "Horrors beyond imagination. Flames devouring homes, the dead stacked like timber, and Christians burned alive for sport." He wasn't quoting prophecy. He was describing Rome under Nero, the beast in the flesh. Suetonius, Roman biographer of emperors. He told us how Nero, dressed in skins, watched believers torn by dogs and lit his garden with their burning bodies. He recorded how the emperor declared war on heaven itself, and all of it matches Revelation. The horses, the seals, the bowls, the beast, the whore, the fire, the fall. Jesus said it, and they saw it. And still, we've been told it hasn't happened yet. Still we wait for what already was. But prophecy doesn't expire, and history, it remembers, if you dare to look. Because there was a war in heaven. Satan fell like lightning. Jerusalem was judged. The kingdom came, and we're living in the aftermath, not the prelude. This wasn't a vision. This was recorded fact. Jesus wept, but he warned, and when he said, "These are the days of vengeance," he meant it, because Revelation is a record of what already broke the world and still echoes now. They asked him, "When will these things happen?" And he didn't speak in riddles. He gave a warning that rang like thunder. "When you see the abomination of desolation standing in the holy place, let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains." And then he said something strange, something haunting. "Wherever the carcass is, there the eagles will be gathered." Not long after, they came, not with scrolls or peace, but with standards. Golden eagles lifted high on Roman poles. Each legion bore them like gods, and they had arrived at Jerusalem, and they didn't stop outside the gates. They entered. They brought the eagle into the temple, into the Holy of Holies, into the place no Gentile was ever to step. They offered sacrifices, not to Yahweh, but to Rome. That was abomination. The holy place was desecrated. The covenant was pierced, and the desolation began. The temple burned, its gold melted into the stones, and the soldiers ripped it apart, stone by stone, to take it back. Just like he said, not one stone shall be left upon another. And over the ruin, over the carcass of the city, the eagle circled, just like he said it would. This wasn't a warning for a distant generation. It was a cry for his own people, and the ones who listened, and the ones who ran. They lived. Let the reader understand. Matthew 24:15. They told you the kingdom was in the future, but what if it already came and they buried it? They flipped the script not by accident, not by confusion, but with precision, power, and time. The truth is this: Christ reigned, Satan was bound, and the earth knew peace for a time. But then the dragon rose. Rome didn't die, it transformed. The empire that crucified the King of Glory didn't vanish, it changed uniforms. It wrapped itself in church robes, took the eagle off the spear and put it in the sanctuary and whispered, "This is holy." They took the bloodstained sword of Caesar and forged it into a staff for the bishops, and the crowd cheered. The Vatican rose, not as the bride of Christ, but the whore of the empire. They rewrote the story, burned the gospels they didn't approve, canonized men, silenced saints, and built cathedrals not in glory, but over bones. This wasn't worship, it was conquest. Then came the Masons, not the bricklayers, builders of deception. They collected every forbidden symbol, every ancient blueprint, Egypt, Babylon, Greece, Rome, and they encoded them into architecture, government, and education. Temples without names, rituals without gods, pyramids without pharaohs. They called it enlightenment. Then came the foundations: Rockefeller, Carnegie, Stanford. They seized the printing presses, the schoolhouses, the seminaries. They erased the old world with chalk dust and donation checks, buried the millennial reign under museum basements and library redactions, and they wrote a new history. There never was a kingdom. This world has always been ruled by man. Look forward to your Savior, but never back. But the Bible never said to forget. It said to remember. The kingdom of God is within you. Some standing here shall not taste death. He shall reign until every enemy is under his feet. So what did they do? They flipped it, reversed the entire timeline. Tribulation, buried. Reign of Christ, forgotten. Fall of Satan, erased. And in its place, a hollow religion, a false history, an empire with new robes and new titles, but the same old dragon beneath. And the eagle, it still flies over Rome, over Washington, over churches who pray to God and kneel to Caesar. They flipped the script so well, most people don't even know there was another version. But we do, and now we're flipping it back.
If you enjoyed this polished retelling of progress and civilization,
And if you're questioning what's really been buried under the official story,
then don't forget to like the video.
share it with the ones who aren't afraid to ask why.
Follow and subscribe for new episodes uncovering forgotten marvels.
And the history that still yaps beneath the ruins.
Because the past isn't silent, it's yapping.